So we have another video. Right now we're coming to you from Miami. You're gonna hear lots of cars driving by. And that is because this is an unintended stop as well in Miami, but a divinely timed. So, as I continue to think about this trip and how everything fell into place, and like, for example, on a whim, I just Googled houses in Panama, and the first thing that came up was this compound that I found. And then there was me sending it to my husband and him saying, you know what, go just look at it. Go look. And then me thinking it was probably a scam because this place was gorgeous and on the beach and everything that I've ever dreamed of. And of course, the part of my brain that says, this is too good to be true, or this won't work out. The part of my brain that used to be there, that used to say that, said, you know, this might not even be real. And then when I talked to them and found out that it was real, and the lady said, come on down. And she was like, come tomorrow. And my husband said, yeah, go do it. It just felt like, what is this? Is this really happening? Have you ever experienced something like that? Where things just are falling into place and you're not even trying? So then the next thing I was like, well, you know what? I don't know how much the flights are. I have to pay for a flight. I have to find some place to stay. I don't speak Spanish well at all. And so there were so many barriers that were in my mind that, again, if the version of me that doubted everything or feared that things wouldn't work out, if I allowed that version of me to take the reins, this would have stopped dead in its tracks. But it didn't. And so I looked up a flight, and the flight was 555 exactly. And then in my mind I said, hold on, I've got miles. Let me see how much this flight is with miles. And it was $83. That's with one of the legs being business class flight. So then I tell my husband, and he says, yeah, sure, go. And we'll figure it out. You know, I have kids and we have pickup and drop off. And he said, you know, we got this. We'll figure it out. And then I contacted the realtor down there, who was a lovely lady. And she said, oh, I know somebody who has a little casita for you to rent. $69 a night. What? This is perfect. Okay. Worked it out and headed down to Panama with less than a week's notice. Also, I started getting a little fearful because I started talking to people to get some information about, real estate in Panama, and I started to get some discouraging news. And again, the part of me that said, all right, knew it was too good to be true, I was shedding her. I was releasing her with intention. And I said, Spirit, you know what? You've led me to this. Let me continue to walk it out until you stop me. If I'm going in the wrong direction, you stop me. And then I talked to somebody else and they put a little fear in my mind about, is it safe? And that's always a good question to ask yourself. And so I thought, you know what? What would make me feel safe in this situation? What can I do? What is in my power to do that can make me feel safe? And so I decided that I needed to get an airport transfer to take me to the casita and back and have those scheduled. And that worked perfectly. That was really smooth and simple. And then I got there. And forgot to tell you about the weather. When I saw that it was raining all week long, something said, is there a storm? Part of me wanted to retreat, wanted to return back. And I contacted the folks down there and I said, hey, It says it's raining all week. Are you all expecting a storm? I didn't know that Panama does not experience hurricanes or tropicals. Well, they probably experience tropical storms, but they said, no, you know, it's raining season, so it does rain, but it goes away. And so I said, okay. And I kept going. I mean, just series of events like that happened. And I have felt so supported during this entire trip. In fact, yesterday I was taking my final walk on the beach, and I was talking to a friend, and I said, you know, I'm really happy. I feel so supported. The goals that I set for myself when I came down here, they have been achieved. My goals, by the way, were arrive safely, learn all you can, and come back safely. And so I did feel accomplished, not only because I felt safe and protected, but because I had learned so much, not just about the area, not just about the house, not just about how possible this was. I learned so much about myself. I integrated some practices that are definitely assisting me in leveling up. And so I was really grateful. It felt like, man, you learned so much. And now you're leaving. You're gonna go home business class and just enjoy this flight home. My driver was there early. I was a little concerned because in Panama, the streets, or the area of Panama where I was staying, they don't have street numbers. They don't have an address. So you legit have to use your live location on WhatsApp. And that's another thing. Not having cell phone service was a concern that I had, not being able to be in contact with people. But as soon as I got off the plane, there was a place that said eSIM cards. And for the amount of time that I was staying, it was $20 and I had unlimited data. Just so supported. It wasn't even like hard. I didn't have to go out my way. It was just like feeling a prompt from spirit and then following that. Have you ever experienced that where you don't know what to do and you're just allowing yourself to be prompted by your spirit? I'm going by a car wash right now and it might be really loud. So I'm trying not to talk much about anything of substance because I don't want it to get lost in the noise. Ooh, ooh, that's a word actually. Can we talk about it? Sometimes the noise around us is so loud and there is something profound being spoken to us and we can't hear it because the noise is drowning it out. The busy is drowning it out. Sometimes the noise is us. The noise is us saying, oh, I have to do this, or I have to do that, or oh, I'm worried about this, or I'm worried about that. We can be the noise in our life. The world around us can be the noise in our life. And we have to know when to pause, to pause and to sit in silence and listen to the wisdom of our soul. Whew. I'm going to trust that spirit allowed that message to come through even though I was walking by that car wash. Because that is a powerful message. And it is what I'm being called to assist people through. Listen, this isn't about you becoming a client of mine. This isn't about me having some great wisdom to share with you about your life that is something that you can't get on your own. You absolutely 1000% can do this for yourself. But have you? But will you? Will you allow yourself to quiet and to really listen? Have you practiced how to listen to the wisdom of your soul? Have you practiced drowning out the noise, your noise, the noise of the world, so that you can really hear the things that you are desiring to hear from your higher self, from spirit? Do you know how to sit with yourself and ask yourself those empowering questions? You know what? This is hard work to do for ourselves sometimes. Asking ourselves the empowered question. Because here's the thing. Sometimes I know exactly what is happening with me. A couple weeks ago, I was talking, well, this has been ongoing for a while. So in 2020, everybody was on lockdown and I was working from home, and I had this deep desire to be able to get out of the house so that I could have time for myself before I spent all day in the house working, and then the rest of the day in the house. So I would get up early in the morning, I would walk around my neighborhood, keep my 6-foot distance away from people, and it was a time for me to communicate with nature, and it was a beautiful time. And I used to record these lives and share on YouTube what Spirit was speaking to me. And during that time, I lost, I think it was something like 40 pounds. I lost 40 pounds walking every day. And I walked every day, not to lose 40 pounds, but because Spirit was calling me to walk. In fact, another interesting story, during the time of the social uprising, divine timing is so interesting, because 2019, I wrote a book called Healing Our History and Co-Creating a Culture of Oneness. It was a playbook on how we need to focus on creating a world that works for us all. A world where everyone's physical, social, and emotional needs are met, and everyone feels safe, seen, and celebrated. A world that is fair and just, where everyone is valued equally and no one has to justify how they show up in the world. That was a saying, that was a mantra that I shared throughout the book. And I wrote this book in 2019. I was going to be releasing it in June of 2020 because I was taking it to a conference that I was scheduled to do in Milan, Italy. And then, of course, in March, we had the shutdown and the conference was canceled. And my dream of bringing this book to an international conference and sharing my work with them felt like it was gone. And so I decided, you know what? I'm not going to wait till June to release this book. I'm going to release it May 5th, 5/5/2020. And then 20 days later, George Floyd was murdered for us all to see. And my book was already out there. For 20 days, I had been sharing about it. And people were looking for hope. People were looking for answers. People were looking for direction, inspiration. And this book was out there. And I started getting calls. Now, another interesting fact is on May 19th, 2020, one of the toilets in our house exploded and leaked all through our home. We could not stay there. We had to have complete renovation of two bathrooms and 2 bedrooms and a hallway. Our house was a construction zone. And the insurance company, who usually only will put you in a hotel, because I had 6 people living under my roof, said, you know what? find a house, and we'll see if we can put you all in it. So we needed a lot of space because we're all working from home. And I had this idea, I want to stay by the beach, so let's see if we can get a house in Virginia Beach to stay in. And insurance company said no, but we found this house in downtown Richmond, right off of Monument Avenue. And it has 7 bedrooms, so you'll have your office, and it's perfect. And I said, great. So May 20th, we moved downtown Richmond on Monument Avenue, right in front of the statue of Robert E. Lee. Now, if you don't know who Robert E. Lee is, no, it was not Robert E. Lee. It was Stonewall Jackson. There we go. Sorry. So we moved down there, and because I had already been walking back home, I started walking downtown Richmond, down Monument Ave, down to Carytown. And during these walks, remember, I was praying, I was seeking spirit, I was getting wisdom and knowledge. And maybe 2 nights later, we hear these loud people walking down the street. And shortly after we moved down there, protests began. And of course, because the monument was right in front of where we were staying, we were in the epicenter of this, we were in the epicenter of this huge movement for justice. Keep in mind, I just wrote a book, just released it, but now I'm in the center of this uprising. And I really believe that my energy was brought there for a purpose, to bring in, to balance the work of social justice in that space, to make sure that no one was harmed, and to make sure that the energy of healing and restoration would reign in that space. I mean, there's so many stories that I have around this time, and how everything was divinely aligned and divinely planned, and I was right where I was supposed to be. So I have this awareness that, one, wherever I go in this world, I am called to be there. An ancestor, an energy that is seeking to experience my energy, and for me to reclaim and to retrieve a part of me is also calling me into that space for a purpose. Everything is on purpose. And so, just like I was called to Panama, I think I was called to be here in Miami, because what happened was my flight was delayed yesterday by 5 hours. There was a mechanical error on the plane that was coming to pick us up. And talk about divine protection. A new plane was acquired. Then the rain came and caused a little bit more delay. So much delay that my long layover actually became a delay, a day-long delay. And, you know, something told me that it was divinely timed. It was for a divine purpose. And I believe that. And so now I'm in Miami. I leave here today at 9 p.m. I actually chose that long of a layover because, one, yesterday was a long travel day and I needed rest. I knew that I needed rest, and I was supported to have that rest. Two, I was supported in getting this hotel voucher from the airline. You know, they tried to fight tooth and nail not to give me or anybody else on that flight a voucher because they said it was a result of the weather. However, they weren't taking into account the mechanical error that caused the plane to be delayed in the first place. So after making sure that I was not giving up, advocating for myself, standing my ground, being educated, Spirit set someone right in my way to kind of guide me through that. Even though she couldn't physically help me, when I requested a manager, she was like, yes. And then she said, you know what? Ask for another manager. And I did. And me and everyone on our flight got what we needed. I was also able to have my flight rescheduled. They originally wanted to put me on a flight going from Miami to LaGuardia, New York, which is a terrible airport, and then flying back to Richmond. And I told my husband, and he said, that's ridiculous. And I said, I know, I think so too. He said, get a direct flight. And I saw that there was a direct flight, and it was at the time of 9:53, which is actually 24 hours before the flight that I missed. And so I scheduled that with no problem, kept my business class flight, and was able to stay in a beautiful establishment. And then I said, Spirit, I don't want to sit in the airport all day. Maybe I'll go to the Admiral's Lounge. Spirit said, no, you have some points with the hotel that they put you in. So I go to the hotel and ask them if they could use my points to add an extra night so that I could spend the entire day at the hotel. And they said, your points just ran out in January, even though I just got an email that said that in March that I still had the points. They said, there's nothing we can do to help you. You'll just have to pay. So I went downstairs and I said to the gentleman, I had a hotel transfer. This is why it's important to tell people details. Had a hotel voucher, and I have a flight that leaves at 9 p.m. I just need another night so I can stay the rest of the day and really relax and not have to sit in the airport. And he says, oh, are you sure you don't want to just get the late checkout? And I had already had the lady at the front desk say, you know what, I'm gonna push it back to 12 for you. Now I'll push it back to 1 for you. And I said, oh, well, when is that? And he said 6 p.m. And I said, I'll take it. $73. So I saved $100 and some odd to get this late checkout. Divinely provided for. So this is just a message for you to keep going, to know that you're supported in all that you do. Listen to Spirit. Allow Spirit to guide you, give you direction, give you discernment, and just keep going. You are supported.